Now you can choose from a variety of electric pickup trucks. We've got two today, the Ford F-150 Lightning, one of the originals on the market, and the new GMC Sierra EV. These are full-sizers with big batteries, a whole boatload of tech, and a huge amount of torque and towing capacity. Let's take these two out in the dead of winter to figure out how they measure up. The F-150 Lightning was brand new for 2022. Ford beat everyone on the market except for Rivian. The Sierra EV has been brand new since the end of the 2024 model year, but really, no one bought one. For 2025, both of these trucks compete in a very limited and high-dollar market. Do you want a full-size electric truck? Well, here are two pretty decent options, with caveats. The Lightning is classic F-150. The only telltale is that thick LED band connecting the headlights. It's a little thicker along those headlights as well, and of course the grille is solid, with a slightly different texture than other F-150s. Aside from the blue decals you'll see on the side here and on the back of the bed, the Lightning is so conventional. I like that, because the F-150 has always been a handsome looking truck, and it looks more traditional, so really it's not making a statement that it's an EV, it just is. For 2024 and into 2025, there aren't any major changes on this vehicle. The Lariat has the smaller wheels. If you're jumping up to the Platinum, which we've also tested a few years ago, you're gonna get some more glitz and glam, but essentially any trim looks just like this. The Sierra EV does not want you to think it's a regular Sierra. Nothing about this truck screams regular Sierra 1500, especially the front. A massive solid grille outlined in white LEDs, including the logo here on this top Denali trim. It lights up the night like nothing else. And these 24-inch wheels sitting on 35-inch tall tires, they're absolutely massive. They dwarf the Lightning. Everywhere you go on this truck, it is sleek. It's streamlined. It reminds me of that Art Deco streamliner effect you'd see on locomotives from the 30s and 40s. And it's just as big as a train. This thing just makes the Lightning look tiny when it truly isn't. But that's the effect of this design. Whether you like it or not, it's definitely trendy, but I don't think for the long term that the Sierra EV will look as good as that Lightning. Just like the front, the back of the Lightning has a wide LED band, all in red, connecting those chiseled outer taillights. A nice striking look without being too different from an F-150. And just like a regular F-150, there's a steel bumper and it's detached from the frame. If you hit that, the repair costs are going to be so much lower than the integrated plastic bumper on that Sierra EV. The Sierra EV has oversized, very intricate taillights surrounding a traditional GMC bed. That means this tailgate opens in two different ways if you so choose. I don't usually use it for that, but I do like the bumper steps on either side. That's also traditional GMC and Chevy, and the air suspension is dropped, which makes it easier to enter and exit the truck and access the bed. And in off-road mode, it will raise by a few inches. You can't do that in the Lightning. What you also can't do, rear wheel steering. This truly tightens the turning radius, makes maneuvering the GMC really a breeze compared to the Lightning. But the crab walk feature is very gimmicky. In reality, you're never gonna use it. The Sierra EV has a very unique bed. You can pop the lower sections of the midgate here, 60/40 style, like it's an SUV. Then if you remove the glass panel, which stows behind those back seats, the rest of the portion folds down completely. It's pretty amazing to actually have all of this open space and configure it any way you want. This is pretty cool, and it could be pretty useful. With the entire midgate folded down, you have 10 feet and 10 inches of space. That's 1.5 feet more than you'd normally get with this bed closed, and then you don't even have to have a bed extender. And if you wanted to put a bed extender, imagine how much extra length you could have on this truck. It's a lot. The Lightning has a 5.5-foot bed with the crew cab, and that means about 53 cubic feet of space. Also with the crew cab on this Sierra EV is a 6-foot bed, and that means about 57.5 cubic feet. And they both have a lot of power outlets, including higher voltage 240-volt ones, and that means you could power up to 10.2 kilowatts on the GMC and 9.6 on the Ford. And both of these trucks can actually power a home if you have it so properly equipped at your home. There's a lot of battery capacity, and the bulk of it is accessed from the back. Well, this is just weird. Seeing the hoods open with no engines, but trunk space. Frunk space. 11 cubic feet in the GMC and just over 14 in the Ford. That's pretty good. The Lightning has the more usable frunk. Not only is it bigger, there's some under tray storage here. You can use that for charging adapters if you so choose. There's more bulky tie down points here. I like these clips. Also additional hooks all around, plus a ton of outlets right here. There's 4 plus USB ports. It's just better by far. The Sierra EV also has tie-down points, but they're not as robust as the Lightning. But there are 2 cup holders if you want to tailgate from the front as opposed to the rear. And there's 1 power outlet. The only problem, if you're going golfing and you don't want to shove your clubs in the back seat, you can fit 2 in the Lightning. You can't do it here. The GMC and the Ford have roughly equal wheelbases and height. When it comes to clearance though, the GMC can rise another couple inches in off-road mode. It normally stands at 8.9 inches off the ground, where the Ford is fixed at 8.4. The GMC is also about 4 inches wider. Lariat and above trims have a 15.5-inch portrait screen. The base one has a 12-inch, still good, but this is definitely the one to have, although, as you can tell, it definitely is a bit laggy. Especially when you go into things like driver assistance. You shouldn't have to wait for any of these things to load, my goodness. But there's plenty of features here, just like in the Silverado EV. And also, there's plenty of useful apps like onboard scales. This uses weight sensors in the back of the bed to help you. Now, it has a disclaimer up here because no, it's not official, but it's pretty darn close. And this is very useful so you don't overload it with a trailer. Smart Hitch does the same thing. It helps estimate the weight of the trailer right on the tongue. Also very, very helpful. And just like the Sierra EV, you can use the Lightning as backup power. If you have a special station installed at your home, it has to be a Ford certified station, you can power your home for several days or more with the truck. That's also pretty cool. There's also some weird things. There's a lot of games. I don't understand why you'd want to do this here, but that's kind of interesting if you have nothing better to do while you're charging. There's also a karaoke app if you're feeling like James Corden. I don't, and I wouldn't use this while driving. It's kind of interesting that they have it. Again, plenty of interesting stuff on here. You can also wirelessly project certain apps right onto the screen like it's a smart TV. That's pretty nice, and there's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, for goodness sakes, people, right? Check that out. GMC does not include that on the Sierra EV, and that's a big misstep. The digital instrument panel, not quite as full-featured as what you'll find in the GMC, and by that, I mean there's just not as many graphics that change. But it is really clear. You can see some really important information like the electric motor temperature and the battery temperature, which GMC doesn't even bother to offer you. I really think they should. Everyone should in an EV. It's pretty important, just like engine coolant. Now, you can see other things on here, but you can't see all of the Ford Blue Cruise except when it's activated. So I can't really show you that right now, but it does work well, just as well as the GMC. Again, you can switch audio, do a lot of things here, but I do wish it was fully featured. For example, full screen maps are not offered, and there's really not a whole lot of settings, but it does work faster than the main touchscreen. The Sierra EV has a 16.8-inch touchscreen running Google OS. So you got Google Maps, Google Assistant, but what you don't have, Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. A lot of GM's electric vehicles don't have this, but the gas ones do. I don't understand why. Now, what else can you see in here? Well, there's stuff like trailering, right? You can get alerts for the gross combined weight rating. So if you exceed that in a trailer, it'll tell you. However, you actually have to get your own scale. The F-150 Lightning comes with onboard scales. And you also cannot reverse the trailer automatically. There's nothing like that here except for automatic parking assist. And this truck is so easy to park that you don't even need that. There's also some UI issues, particularly the lights. Why are they here? And why are so many other major controls like the dome light, power window lockouts, they're also here? That really should not be. That's a major issue here that the Lightning does not do. Both of them have massive touchscreens, but the GMC puts a lot more in here. Now the system is good, but this is a little difficult to see when you're on the road. All these icons kind of look the same. And also, there's no ignition button in the Sierra EV. Now, that might not be unusual if you drive a Rivian or a Tesla, but still, it's kind of strange that you cannot control that. Sometimes when you exit the vehicle, it turns itself off when you don't want it to. It's a bit odd. But a really great thing, all the active safety on board and so many ways to customize it. Well, the stereo's okay, that's not really the best part of this right here, but Super Cruise with automatic lane change. Now, Ford also has that with Blue Cruise. but I really do like how GM did this first, and I think in terms of technology, it's a little bit better in terms of accuracy. But again, there's so many other customizations here. You can drop the suspension when you're parked. Plenty of great remote start features, including automatic heated seats, which in the wintertime is absolute magic. I love that. So a lot of good customization here, but really there's a lot of features that are absent here that you can find in the Lightning. The digital instrument panel, it's clear. It's got multiple views, including full screen maps. You can see the driver assistance functions here. Make it really simple. You can't really do too much, and the far left screen that you see there, that's only adjustable with the touch screen. You can only show one thing at a time. I'll just show you real quick. For example, if I wanted to see the trip information, I have to add that to the driver display, and I cannot thumb through it with the steering wheel. That's the only issue here, but the display is easy to read. These trucks make a ton of power and torque. Both dual motors with the largest batteries available. The GMC has a massive 205 kilowatt hour battery, while this Ford is 131. That's roughly what you'll get in a Rivian R1T, and it's more than the standard Lightning's 98 kilowatt hour battery. But let's look at the power. Those two motors on the Lightning, 580 horsepower. On the GMC, 760. And both of these trucks are making nearly 800 foot-pounds of torque. That is massive by any measure. But the weight is definitely an issue. Now, the Lightning is definitely no little tiny truck, but the GMC is nearly 9,000 pounds. It's almost a full ton more than the Ford, and that doesn't necessarily mean better performance in every situation, including EPA estimated fuel economy. In terms of EPA MPGE, electric equivalent for a gallon of gasoline, the Lightning is slightly more efficient. But because the GMC has such a massive battery, it's claiming up to 460 miles of range versus the Lightning's 320. When it comes to working, payload, and towing, they're both roughly equal in terms of towing. 10,000 pounds on the Ford, an extra 500 pounds on the GMC, but the payload really falls short on the GMC. It's under 1,500 pounds, which is roughly what you'd find in the midsize segment. Woo. It's possible to get a little front wheel spin in the Lightning. There's less power, a lot less power at the top end than the Sierra EV, but there's pretty much equal torque. And this is 2,000 pounds lighter. So really, despite them not being totally even in top end power or battery size, the Lightning feels just as quick, if not quicker. One thing I will say about the Sierra EV being so heavy is that it does feel more solid, like one big chunk, one solid mass, as opposed to this traditional body-on-frame pickup design where the cab is separated from the bed. And that way, with this ride, and also there's no air springs, yeah, the Lightning doesn't quite have the same solidity as that Sierra. But for a light-duty truck, and I emphasize the word light, relatively speaking, this is lighter than a Rivian R1T as well, or the Tesla Cybertruck. It drives pretty well. I also think that it feels almost as quiet, maybe just a hair louder than the Sierra EV, but very quiet indeed. And these are much smaller tires. They're only 20s and they're not 3 feet tall. Oh boy. That means you can drive over more obstacles than you could in that Sierra. Both of these trucks have off-road driving modes, but the only one I would actually take off-road, at least until other trims of that Sierra arrive, is the Lightning. Even without the fancy air springs that lift the truck higher, I wouldn't want to damage anything on the Sierra, or I don't want to damage anything on the Lightning either, but if you had to do it, this truck, to me, just seems like everything is way more replaceable, and I know things don't come cheap. But when it comes to durability, I don't know, I'd rather be in this Lightning day to day. The steering feel falls short of the Sierra EV, I will say that. The regular F-150 already steers well, but well isn't quite as secure as that Sierra, including the gas-powered ones. I do like the F-150's handling, but this truck definitely requires a little bit more corrections to keep it on course. Not much, and it still corners really flat, but you just have to kind of get used to the way this steering rack behaves, and the fact that when you kind of move it like this, nothing's happening, so there's some play there. Again, fine in a truck, but in a truck that goes this quickly, especially when I have it in sport mode, I would prefer if Ford tightened that up a bit. But the body control is excellent because the Lightning has an independent rear suspension versus a regular F-150. So that's another big reason why the ride and the handling are so composed. So the steering could be a little bit better, but considering that this truck costs so much less to start, it's in the $60,000 range, I mean, really, it drives exceptionally well. The Sierra is just a hair better around the turns, but I like the lightness of the Lightning. The Lightning, like the Sierra EV, has one pedal driving. I don't like activating that because I just think it's too aggressive, but if you're used to that when driving an EV, it's here. On the Sierra, there's a paddle that you can also temporarily pull, and it'll do the same thing. The Ford doesn't have that, but it's fine. As an EV truck, the Lightning just does not have the same range as that Sierra EV. In the cold, well, it's pretty close. The Sierra loses a heck of a lot more of the battery capacity than this Lightning does. It drains it so much quicker. The Lightning could definitely be better, but I think it's on par with a lot of other EV trucks, including Rivians. Rivians are not that great in the cold either. Truly are not. So the GMC and the Chevy Silverado EV definitely have a place at the top of the hierarchy, but that's only because the battery is so much bigger. Personally, I think if you can keep a Lightning year-round and know its limitations, just like that GMC, you'll probably be fine. But again, you're going to be restricted with a truck like this. You're not going out of state. And by out of state, I mean small states like Rhode Island and Connecticut. What I like about the F-150 Lightning is that it feels very similar to an F-150 Tremor. I reviewed that, check it out. I mean, it's interesting how you can get into a gas-powered F-150, jump into the electric one, and feel like really nothing has changed. Ford gets a lot of flack for not having a dedicated EV platform for this truck, but ultimately, especially with the way things are going with EVs, I think this was the smarter move. Handles like a charm. Really, the independent rear suspension. It just feels light on its tires. It really does. A braking feel too. I like driving the Lightning just because I don't feel like there's as much mass, because there isn't. Cue the sound effects. The Sierra EV is quick, and it damn well better be. There's so much power going on here. This is essentially like Lamborghini Aventador levels of horsepower. Mercedes S65 and up levels of torque in a heavy-duty pickup truck. The best way I can describe the Sierra EV is that it weighs more than a heavy-duty truck, yet it doesn't have the payload capacity of a light-duty. And that really is kind of the odd thing here. This is 9,000 pounds of truck going down the road. The tires are set to over 60 PSI, which is heavy-duty level. Yet it doesn't ride horribly. These are thin profile 24s. Like, the tires alone are probably like $400 a piece, and you probably couldn't even lift them. It's really crazy to imagine something this large, and yet effortless, and doesn't feel like a big tank going down the road. The Sierra EV, just like the Lightning, has a hands-free driving mode. On lots of marked highways, it works pretty well. You can watch our other reviews to see how well it works. It's constantly being improved. And that's just one party trick that this truck has. I think the Sierra EV, specifically as a ground-up EV, definitely feels more isolated and quieter. This truck is wider than the Lightning by almost 4 inches, and it weighs at least another ton, but it doesn't feel like it. In traditional GM fashion, the steering is pretty connected, though not as connected, I think, as past GM models, like the Cadillac Escalade. Watch that review. Steering in that truck is excellent. There's some slight numbness off center, but it's pretty forgiving, and the truck does not wander in the lane. And part of that is because if winds hit this vehicle, it's a lot harder to have a side wind against a 9,000-pound truck versus a 6,000-pound truck. But the air suspension really does take care of the bumps. A few times, though, harsher bumps will inevitably come through the cabin because those low-profile tires can only do so much. But the more I drive this truck, the more I'm convinced that I'm in something much smaller, and that's not a good thing because you really can be going way too quick and taking corners way too fast than you ever would in a regular pickup truck. But for comfort, long-distance drives, this is easily one of the nicest trucks. But there's no massage seats. There's a lot of luxury features that I was expecting in a Denali that I'm not getting in this truck. And I get that most of the money goes to that giant battery pack, but it certainly isn't Cadillac levels of luxury or even regular GMC Denali level luxury in this vehicle right now. But in just terms of driving dynamics, it's very enjoyable. The response of the motors, the torque vectoring, like everything is instantaneous. But it's not quite as crazy as a Rivian R1T, and neither is the Lightning. But it's also a lot more secure at the helm. The Rivian just kind of feels like it squats out of control under hard acceleration. I also feel that this Sierra EV versus the Silverado EV, and we've tested that one too, this one seems more stable when accelerating. And I don't know if GM has changed, say, some of the torque settings upon acceleration, but I definitely feel like this Sierra is a bit more planted than the Chevy, despite them sharing the same powertrain. Now, when you have a battery pack this big, you don't really think about the range that much. And in the warmer months, I tried a Silverado EV, and I was really impressed by the range. It was really close to that truck's 400 plus mile estimate. In the cold weather with this Sierra EV, we're just talking temperatures in the 30s, nothing too extreme. It's probably 300 miles at best. That's what I would estimate. You can see the numbers that we've collected here from our 100-mile highway trip. And the GMC just doesn't do as well as the Lightning, despite the Lightning having significantly less range. In cold weather, both of these trucks are not too far apart in terms of their total range. The practicality of both of these trucks, it really only works if you're in a fleet and you're only going short distances, say 100 miles or less at a time, and you're towing. And if you're not towing, fine, maybe you can extend that radius a bit longer. Else, it's a big price to pay for a lot of compromise. But if you can afford it, I mean, it sure is fun to drive and fun to look at. Weirdly enough, the Sierra EV handles better than an Acura ZDX or the Chevy Blazer EV. That shouldn't make any sense, but it happens. This handles really well. It steers with really more immediacy than the Lightning. And despite all this extra weight, I actually feel like the brakes are powerful for once, and I don't ever feel like that in a gas-powered Sierra. The Lightning looks like every bit a traditional F-150. For many people, myself included, that's the biggest selling point. The Lightning in this Lariat trim is more plasticky, and it's a lot more vinyl, so the materials aren't quite as up to snuff as that Sierra EV, but that one is nearly 20 grand more. Plus, you can see an ignition switch button, so many other switches that carry over from the regular F-150. Now, the touchscreen is a little tricky sometimes, but Ford has really executed this interior well. So many practical features in here. That seems like it could be silly, but then when you do this, you have a whole work tray table. It's stuff like this, plus switches up here for the lights that aren't in the touchscreen. That's really good. There's 3 more inches of headroom and another inch of legroom compared to the Lightning. Now, the Denali is a very nice trim, but if you're expecting Sierra 1500 Denali quality, not quite. The seats have a quilted upper pattern. There's also matte wood trim, which looks pretty good until you touch it. It's not always that nice, certainly not for $100,000 on this truck, but I do like it more than the Chevy, and it definitely looks more put together than the Ford. It looks more polished like a luxury car. It's just not all luxury grade. I like though that the wireless phone charger is right on this wood trim. It's a nice drawer. There's some nice materials in here, don't get me wrong. And I also like the panoramic moonroof, but there's no electrochromic shading. So even though it's tinted, there's no cover, which is not always the most practical thing. Ford says this has 1.7 inches more headroom than the Sierra EV. It feels though a little tighter, both here because of the panoramic moonroof, which is very nice, heated outboard seats. It's still very roomy, but the Sierra just feels truly cavernous. If you want a cavernous backseat in your pickup truck, it's definitely Sierra EV, and there's a smidge more legroom than that in the Lightning. Even without comparing it though, it's really nice, heated outboard seats, and behind these seats, well, you already saw what they do, the most flexible cabin you can get. The Ford F-150 Lightning starts around $63,000. There are 4 trims. Ours was the Lariat, with options $87,000 with destination. The GMC Sierra EV starts at $92,000. For now, there's only 1 trim. More are supposedly coming in 2025, but it will be a while, so you're gonna pay about $102,000 as tested. As much as the GMC impresses me, that Sierra is a show pony. The Lightning is a work truck and a luxury EV. It does both. It's just more practical in the sense that all the accessories and aftermarket equipment fit on this Lightning like they do with any F-150. The truck is easier to service because it's not a unibody in that bed, it's detached from the cab. And even though the range and the power are down versus the GMC, in the cold weather, it's not that much of a difference, truly. In hotter climes, yes, I'm sure there would be an absolute difference. But for my money, and the fact that the GMC is so much heavier and really just not as usable as an everyday truck, I think the nod has to go to the Lightning, despite it being not as trendy looking. But what do you think? For more EV reviews, stick right here. Trucks, SUVs, cars, hatchbacks, we got them on CarGurus. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.